Singapore, a gleaming city-state, known around the world for its immaculate streets, stunning skyline, and a reputation for unparalleled economic success. It is a nation that consistently ranks high in global competitiveness, innovation, and quality of life. Many view Singapore as a beacon of fiscal prudence and effective governance, a true financial powerhouse in Southeast Asia and beyond. Its story often paints a picture of careful planning, strategic investments, and robust economic growth, leading to immense wealth. Yet, lurking beneath this polished surface is a staggering statistic that might surprise many, even shock some. According to the International Monetary Fund, a highly respected global financial body, Singapore in the year 2023 carried a gross debt to its gross domestic product of over 167%. Let that number sink in. 167%. To put this into perspective, let us compare it with other major economies. The United States, often in the news for its own debt concerns, stands at around 123%. France, another significant European economy, reports a debt to gross domestic product of approximately 110%. Even Switzerland, a country often compared to Singapore for its financial prowess and stability, maintains a much lower 39%. In many parts of the world, such a colossal figure for government debt would immediately trigger alarms. It would be seen as a grave sign of mismanagement, a precursor to economic instability, or even an impending financial crisis. Debt, after all, is a word often associated with fear, caution, and potential downfall. History is replete with examples of how excessive debt, whether it is sovereign debt, corporate debt, or even personal debt, can pose immense risks to the entities that bear it. High debt is a concern that many prefer not to even acknowledge, let alone scrutinize. The conventional wisdom dictates that low debt is good, and high debt is bad. So, how can it be? How can Singapore, this paragon of economic excellence and careful financial stewardship, possess one of the highest government debts in the entire world? Is this seemingly insurmountable debt a ticking time bomb, threatening to derail its impressive journey? Is Singapore on the verge of bankruptcy due to this massive financial obligation? These are the questions that naturally arise when confronted with such a paradox. To truly understand this intricate situation, to unravel the mystery behind Singapore's enormous debt, we must delve deeper. We must look beyond the surface numbers and grasp the fundamental workings of Singapore's unique economic and fiscal philosophy. It is a story that challenges conventional wisdom and reveals a sophisticated approach to national finance. You see, Singapore's government debt, while appearing high on paper, does not tell the complete story. The raw percentage alone does not capture the unique and carefully crafted strategy that underpins its financial architecture. Singapore has developed an entirely distinct approach to government borrowing and overall fiscal management, an approach that profoundly differentiates it from many other nations grappling with high debt levels. To truly comprehend this distinction, let us first examine the very reasons why Singapore chooses to borrow money. When most governments around the world issue debt, their primary motivation is usually straightforward: to finance budget deficits. A budget deficit occurs when a government spends more money than it collects through its various sources of revenue, such as taxes and fees. This is a common scenario in many countries, and it is a significant challenge faced by nations like the United States today. Let us consider the situation in the United States as a clear point of contrast. A report published by the United States Treasury revealed that in 2023, the federal government collected approximately $4.44 trillion in revenue. During the same period, it spent a staggering $6.13 trillion. This substantial expenditure is necessary to fund a vast array of projects and services crucial for the nation's functioning and economic growth. This money goes towards critical areas such as military operations, healthcare funding for its citizens, essential infrastructure development, and a long list of other governmental responsibilities. The revenue, on the other hand, is primarily collected from various forms of taxes and other special incomes. The disparity between spending and revenue in the United States in 2023 resulted in a shortfall of approximately $1.7 trillion. So, where does the United States government acquire this $1.7 trillion to cover its obligations? They borrow it. This is precisely where the issuance of government debt instruments, such as bonds, becomes crucial. The United States Treasury issues various types of bonds, including Treasury bills, notes, and longer-term bonds, to a diverse range of investors. These instruments essentially represent a promise from the government to pay back the borrowed money, along with a specified amount of interest, at a predetermined future date. Investors, who range from individual citizens and large financial institutions to foreign governments, purchase these bonds, thereby providing the United States government with the necessary funds to cover its deficit. It is a system designed to bridge the gap between what the government earns and what it needs to spend in the short to medium term. Singapore, however, operates under a fundamentally different paradigm. The reasons behind its issuance of government debt are distinct, and notably, not for the purpose of covering its fiscal deficits. Singapore issues two main types of government debt: Singapore Government Securities, known as SGS, and Special Singapore Government Securities, known as SSGS. Each serves a very specific and strategic purpose within Singapore's broader financial ecosystem. Let us first examine Singapore Government Securities, or SGS. These bonds are issued primarily for a very sophisticated reason: the development and enhancement of the local debt market. This objective is crucial for fostering a vibrant, deep, and liquid bond market within Singapore. Such a market is not merely an abstract financial concept, it is an essential pillar for the growth, stability, and overall sophistication of Singapore's entire financial sector. A well-developed government bond market provides a benchmark for other financial instruments, making it easier for corporations and other entities to raise capital. It offers a safe and liquid investment option for various financial institutions, thereby improving the efficiency of the capital markets. The regular issuance of SGS bonds also plays a vital role in the management of the country's overall liquidity. It acts as a mechanism for the government to absorb any excess funds that might be circulating within the financial system. By doing so, it can help in effectively controlling inflationary pressures and ensuring the broader economic stability of the nation. This is a strategic tool, not a desperate measure to cover shortfalls. It is about building a strong financial infrastructure that benefits the entire economy. On the other hand, we have the Special Singapore Government Securities, or SSGS. These are a unique category of non-tradable bonds that are issued specifically to the Central Provident Fund, widely known as CPF. The Central Provident Fund is a cornerstone of Singapore's social security system. It is a mandatory, comprehensive pension fund designed for all working Singaporeans and permanent residents. The funds accumulated in CPF accounts are primarily intended to provide for the retirement, healthcare, and housing needs of its members. The SSGS play a critical role in the meticulous management of these vast CPF funds. The interest rates attached to SSGS are carefully pegged to the interest rates that the government commits to pay its CPF members on their accumulated balances. This meticulously designed arrangement ensures a crucial outcome: that the Central Provident Fund can consistently meet its substantial liabilities and obligations to its millions of members. In essence, the government is borrowing from its own national pension fund, but it is doing so in a structured way that guarantees the security and growth of those pension savings. This is not about external borrowing to keep the lights on, it is an internal mechanism for robust pension fund management and financial stability for its citizens. Therefore, when viewed through this lens, Singapore's issuance of Singapore Government Securities and Special Singapore Government Securities is predominantly centered on strategic objectives: fostering financial market development and ensuring the sound management of national pension funds. These are fundamentally different motivations than merely financing day-to-day government expenditure or covering fiscal deficits that arise from overspending. But this naturally leads to another pressing question: if Singapore is not borrowing to cover budget deficits, does that imply that Singapore somehow does not experience such shortfalls? Does it consistently collect more in taxes and other revenues than it spends? The answer, historically, is a resounding yes. Singapore has an established and well-documented track record of often reporting significant budget surpluses. This consistent fiscal strength is a direct result of several interwoven factors. Firstly, there is its conservative approach to expenditure. The government is known for its disciplined spending habits, prioritizing efficiency and long-term value over short-term political gains. Secondly, it possesses an exceptionally effective and broad-based tax system. The country utilizes a variety of revenue sources, including a competitive income tax, a robust corporate tax, and the goods and services tax, which is a value-added tax. These streams ensure a steady and substantial flow of funds into the national coffers. Furthermore, one cannot possibly overlook the immense contributions of Singapore's sovereign wealth funds. These are powerful, state-owned investment vehicles that manage the nation's substantial financial reserves. Two of the most prominent are Temasek Holdings and GIC Private Limited. These institutional firms have consistently generated billions of dollars in returns for Singapore, year after year. These profits are not just held idly, they are strategically deployed. Sometimes, a portion of this money is used to cover any rare or unforeseen budget shortfalls that might arise, providing a vital safety net. However, more often than not, these substantial earnings are reinvested back into the global economy, continuously growing Singapore's financial asset base. By diligently accumulating large reserves and strategically investing them through sophisticated entities like Temasek Holdings and GIC, Singapore has meticulously created an unparalleled buffer against economic uncertainties. This proactive and forward-looking strategy has proven to be particularly effective during periods of global economic turbulence. For a compelling example, consider the global financial crisis of 2008. During that severe downturn, the Singapore government was able to draw upon its significant reserves to stimulate the domestic economy, protecting jobs and businesses, all without needing to substantially increase its public debt. This illustrates the strength of its long-term financial planning. However, it is also important to acknowledge that this does not mean Singapore never experiences budget deficits. In certain specific years, the government might intentionally run a deficit. This typically occurs when it makes a strategic decision to significantly ramp up spending to stimulate the economy during challenging downturns or, crucially, to invest heavily in major, long-term infrastructure projects. In such carefully considered cases, any deficits that do arise are typically planned and meticulously managed within the broader context of a comprehensive and longer-term fiscal strategy. They are deliberate choices, not indicators of fiscal distress. This understanding of infrastructure and long-term strategic investment brings us to another pivotal aspect of Singapore's debt story. In the year 2021, the Singaporean government introduced and proposed a landmark piece of legislation, the Significant Infrastructure Government Loan Act, or SINGA for short. This act is not just another law. It represents a significant legislative framework that specifically empowers the Singaporean government to borrow money for the explicit purpose of financing major, long-term infrastructure projects. The details of this act are telling. Singapore is authorized to borrow through this mechanism for as much as 90 billion Singapore dollars, and for a remarkably extended period of up to 50 years. This strategic choice already reflects a fundamental difference in how Singapore views and utilizes its debt. They are borrowing money, not primarily to cover its immediate fiscal deficits or to fund ongoing operational expenses, but rather to make substantial, forward-looking investments in the nation's future. Let us once again contrast this with the situation in the United States. When the United States borrows money to cover its fiscal deficits, it is often using those funds to maintain the functionality of its essential services in the short to medium term. This means ensuring that its healthcare system continues to operate, that its government agencies remain funded, and that its military can continue its operations. While the United States certainly does invest in infrastructure and other long-term strategies, this is generally not the main driver of its deficit-driven borrowing. Singapore, on the other hand, strategically and explicitly focuses a significant portion of its borrowing on long-term growth and nation-building initiatives. Now that the Significant Infrastructure Government Loan Act is fully in effect, it is highly probable that Singapore will indeed see an increase in its overall government debt figures. However, because these funds are being directed towards long-term projects with generational benefits, the approach is fundamentally different. By engaging in this type of borrowing, the government is able to wisely spread the substantial cost of these immense assets over the entire period of their useful life. This ensures that the financial burden does not fall disproportionately or unfairly on just the current generation of taxpayers. It is an intergenerational equity approach. This method of financing is particularly pertinent given the sheer scale and long-term nature of the infrastructure projects that Singapore undertakes. We are talking about critical developments such as new mass rapid transit lines, which are the backbone of its public transportation system, ambitious port development projects, which are vital for its role as a global trading hub, and the continuous expansion and modernization of its world-class airport facilities. These projects require truly substantial upfront investments but, in return, promise extended periods of invaluable service and immense economic benefit to the nation for decades to come. Moreover, the decision to implement the SINGA Act is also reflective of Singapore's typically low interest rate environment. In such an environment, it can be significantly more cost-effective and financially prudent for the government to finance these massive projects through carefully structured loans rather than by depleting its considerable national reserves or by imposing immediate, potentially burdensome, tax increases on its citizens and businesses. This strategic foresight highlights why Singapore is frequently regarded as a deeply forward-thinking nation when it comes to sophisticated fiscal management. By clearly prioritizing long-term investment and robust infrastructural development, the Singapore government consistently demonstrates an unwavering commitment to sustainable growth and future resilience. This comprehensive approach not only visibly enhances the city-state's physical landscape and significantly improves its livability for residents but also powerfully bolsters its economic resilience and global competitiveness. For instance, well-planned and efficient investments in public transportation not only markedly improve the daily lives of residents by reducing commute times and congestion but also serve as a powerful magnet for attracting international businesses and highly skilled talent, contributing directly to a dynamic, innovative, and competitive economy on the global stage. However, it is crucial to maintain a balanced perspective and acknowledge that even this highly sophisticated and strategic approach does not come with zero risk. Infrastructure development and long-term investing are inherently complex and difficult endeavors. No matter how meticulously planned, there is always an element of uncertainty. What if, for instance, Singapore borrows the full $90 billion under the SINGA Act, but the projects it funds only manage to generate economic returns or benefits equivalent to $70 billion? That scenario, however unlikely given Singapore's track record, is precisely where the core concern lies. The ultimate success of this debt-financed strategy hinges critically on the government's astute ability to consistently choose the right projects that are not only viable but also yield substantial long-term benefits for the nation. Only through careful selection, diligent execution, and robust oversight will Singapore ensure that its debt-financed projects are truly fruitful and contribute positively to its national wealth. Let us circle back to the very beginning of our discussion, the country's seemingly enormous debt to gross domestic product ratio. While it is undeniably true that Singapore does carry a very substantial gross debt, this number, as we have explored, does not tell the full, true story. The most crucial piece of information that puts all of this into perspective is a little-known but profoundly significant fact: Singapore actually has effectively zero net debt. What exactly does it mean for a nation to have zero net debt, especially when its gross debt appears so high? Well, it fundamentally means that due to the country's incredibly robust balance sheet, its financial assets are not just equal to, but are actually well in excess of its total debt. Imagine a household that has a large mortgage on a very valuable home, but also holds a much larger amount of money in savings, investments, and other valuable assets. That household, despite its mortgage, would be in a very strong net financial position. Singapore operates on a similar, albeit vastly larger, principle. This formidable net asset position is not just a theoretical concept, it has tangible, positive implications for Singapore's economy and its citizens. It directly influences the substantial returns earned on Singapore's colossal national reserves. These earnings, in turn, contribute significantly to government spending through a mechanism known as the Net Investment Returns Contribution. This means that the wealth generated from past savings and investments effectively helps fund current government programs and services, reducing the reliance on direct taxation or further borrowing. Moreover, Singapore's remarkably robust balance sheet is the foundational key factor in why it consistently achieves the highest possible AAA credit rating from all three major international credit rating agencies. These agencies, namely Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch, are the global arbiters of financial trustworthiness. A AAA rating signifies the absolute lowest credit risk, indicating that a nation is highly unlikely to default on its financial obligations. This prestigious rating translates into lower borrowing costs for Singapore, further enhancing its fiscal prudence and ensuring that its strategic borrowing remains economically efficient. In conclusion, Singapore's seemingly massive national debt, when thoroughly examined, reveals a sophisticated, calculated, and deeply strategic financial approach. It is not a sign of weakness or impending crisis, but rather a testament to meticulous planning, long-term vision, and a unique method of leveraging financial tools for national development and future prosperity. The numbers alone, without this contextual understanding, paint an incomplete and potentially misleading picture. So, the next time you hear about Singapore's high government debt, remember the full story. It is a debt of investment, a debt of future building, and ultimately, a debt backed by immense assets and unparalleled fiscal strength.